Game Worn Radio is on the air.
Hey! Shelton scores! Up in the Cordova, baby! We're going bowling. Now, let's go hunt moose on a Harley. The fire, she scores! L.A. face with an Oakland booty. Make me a bicycle club. They score! Bowmeister! Pay that man his money!
Game Worn Radio.
Mike McKenna, he's a cool customer whether he's in net or celebrating his first NHL shutout. Question, 25-year-old Mike McKenna, the #1 star of this game, with a big shutout and a signed stick for a lucky fan.
Hey everybody, it's Derek with GameWorn.us. We are rocking Game Worn Radio tonight, and we've got a special guest with us, Mike McKenna. Thanks for joining us with us, Mike.
No problem, and I'm amazed you guys dug up that archive audio from back in Tampa. It's hard to believe it. Man, the 25-year-old guy, well, I'm 32 now. It's 7 years ago. That's amazing.
Thank God for YouTube. I just did some searching and dug across that and was able to rip that audio out of there. It doesn't seem like it's probably been that long at sometimes for you, does it?
No, it really doesn't. I mean, there's some times where it does when you think about all the things that have happened since then, just in life and in hockey in general. But really, no, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago. And I think my whole pro career feels like it hasn't been that long. But if they told me to go back to like juniors, feels like it was decades ago, and it literally was. And then college the same way feels, when it's been 10 seasons. But pro is just kind of flowed together, especially since that Tampa year. It's been a pretty quick ride ever since then.
Well, I want to give you the proper introduction for all our listeners out there who do not know who you are. Mike McKenna it's somebody that I've known since speaking of a decade ago, 99, 2000. Met him when he was playing with the North American Hockey League, Springfield Junior Blues. He was drafted by Nashville and has been a pro goalie for 10 years now, I believe. And he's also, besides that, the reason we have him on is he also collects his game-worn jerseys and keeps all his goalie masks. So besides being a pro goalie, he's also a game-worn collector of his own stuff.
And I guess I've never really thought of myself as that, but it is true. I've kept, along the way, I've also kept a couple sets of equipment that had special meaning. I haven't kept all of them because that would just be... it'd just be too much, really, you think of it. But, I still have my college set of gear from the finishing time. I've got my Tampa Bay gear when I first got to the NHL. So I have a couple sets here and there, but you're right. I do try to get my jerseys if I can. And it's been a process in some occasions to get those, but, I don't have an exact count of them, but I have most of the teams I've played for, barring a couple, but, it's just something that's going to be really neat to be able to look back on later in life and these things that I actually wore on the ice. And I mean, I don't know what I'll do with them. Certainly don't have a house big enough to frame them and put them up, and but maybe someday, I guess. But they're great keepsakes, and especially the helmets too. I mean, those are as cool as it gets, and that's probably the reason why we all end up being goalies anyway.
And at least two of us that are on in this call, both Derek and myself, play goalie. Definitely not to the level that you play, but we both do play. And I've got a mask in process of getting done, and the artwork is awesome to come up with that.
Well, I think I've always said that there's 3 reasons I think why people are ever goaltenders, and the first one I think is, it used to be. They always put the kid who couldn't skate in the net. So
True in
I
my
think that
case.
was the first reason. Then the second reason was you had an older brother or sister that they picked on you and put you in the goal when they were shooting in the basement or in the street or if you're from Canada, out on the pond. And I was an only child and I was an okay skater, and so the reason why I became a goalie was equipment. And I'm sure that is really the biggest portion why. I mean, who else in sports really gets a chance to personalize things as much as we do with a mask and kind of get to show off your creative side like that?
Now, when did you start actually wanting to collect your game-worn jerseys?
Well, I guess it didn't really even cross my mind because coming out of college, and I didn't really know a ton about professional hockey and like in terms of like the ins and outs of behind the scenes stuff. And my assumption was that every team gave you a jersey or two, or you walked away with one at the end of the season. And my first 2 years in Vegas, they gave me a jersey, and it was only after that that I realized how rare and how special that is because most teams, one, don't let you keep a jersey, and then some of them don't even give you the option of purchasing your own jersey. Um, for the most part, most teams either allow you to buy it, or they give you one. Even this year, the Coyotes and the Portland organization were great to us. They let us take home a jersey, which I was really thankful for. But I've had teams along the way that I don't even know how I'd get hold of the jersey. So it just kind of happened like that. I had the first couple ones from Vegas, and then as I went along, I started to try to find ways to pick them up one way or another, whether I had to purchase it through the team. And Jason, you've actually helped me find a couple of them along the way too, which has been great. Jerseys that end up out in the world, and who knows where they are, but you guys seem to know where they all are, so that helps me too.
Well, and that was such, and I've talked about this on past shows with different things that we've gotten into is first that, yeah, we are surprised that teams don't give players the first option on things, because the other guys that do this show and others have commented that they know other players that collect their jerseys, at least want one, and a lot of teams just don't do it. But we got lucky in the case of your one of your Tampas, and then the New Jersey Devils jersey, which I had. I loved making that deal, and I still talk about that. Was lucky enough to get one of your Devil sets of gear, and also being lucky enough to also be full right, able to use it all. But I knew how much that jersey meant to you, and also being able to help track down your Tampa jersey from just throwing it out on a message board. And I mean, at least the guy, he didn't try to jack up the price. He just got what he originally paid out of it. And at the end of the day, I don't think is a bad deal. But it's nice to get those jerseys into your hands, because it means a whole lot more to you than it does anybody else.
Yeah, I would like to think that for sure, and it's, I really appreciated it too, especially the guy at the Tampa, and then, I mean, I'm glad I could help you out to get some good gear too, but, just when the player would like his own jersey, if the person that has it gives it up at cost, I mean, that's really a cool thing to do. Because, I mean, clearly, if I wanted it bad enough, I probably would have paid a lot more for it, you'd think. Especially being my first NHL team, that one really would have meant a lot to me. But as I've gotten older here, it's gotten interesting, though, because it's, you finish up the year here, and if the team doesn't offer you a chance to buy your jersey, you see it sitting in the team's pro shop or something for an amount that I don't want to pay for my own jersey, and then you kind of feel indignant about things, and it's just this really funny dynamic with that. I think we all wish that, we'd have one jersey that we'd wear maybe for like 10 or 12 games or something, that the team says, here you go, this one's yours, take it home, but you're not getting anything else. But yeah, it just doesn't work like that, and that's the team's prerogative. I mean, we wear the jersey, and they purchase it for us, so they can do what they please with it.
So would you say that,
let's say, go ahead, Derek.
Would you say the Tampa Bay jersey is your favorite because it's your first NHL team?
Yeah, it definitely holds the most sentiment to me, for sure. It's hard to compete with that anyway, right? But all the jerseys along the way have been pretty cool when you think about it. Going to even back to, especially like my draft jersey, that one, I never played for the Predators, I never signed with them, but that jersey means a whole lot to me, just because it was kind of important, not for myself, but for my family, even for the city of St. Louis with hockey, because I was the first goalie drafted. And now we've had more guys that have come through, and Ben Bishop's drafted, and then Cal Heater plays an NHL game, and then this year a kid named Luke Opilka was drafted by the Blues, another St. Louis goalie. And so to me that meant a lot. But a cool story on my draft jersey from Nashville, it was that beautiful mustard color that they had for a third jersey for a few years. And it took me every bit of, I think, 10 years to finally get my nameplate on that.
Oh, wow.
I had it from the draft, and I don't know why I didn't take care of it earlier because I had the connections to do it, but I finally got on it, and Mitch Korn, their goaltending coach at the time, got in touch with their equipment manager who just had enough of the lettering and the material to make me a name bar. Because I never had one. I was drafted in the 6th round, so all I had was just a blank 02 jersey, Nashville Predators jersey. And then, like I think it was 9 or 10 years later, I finally got a person or had my nameplate put on it. It was pretty cool.
Now, do you find that it's harder to get jerseys if you don't get it from the team the longer it goes on, like to track them down, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, aside from really my connection with Jason, that's my best one, and I actually have found a couple of them on My Gray. I know that they used to have a bunch of them, and I haven't checked there in a while, but I think I bought one from those guys once back in the day. They had, I think, an Omaha Knights jersey of mine that I was there for like a month and a half, 1 year or a month. And the jersey's been sitting on My Gray forever. Nobody had bought it, and I made the guy an offer, and he gladly accepted to get it off his hands, I guess. So I've got that jersey. And then oddly enough, I think 1 or 2 of my jerseys I've been tipped off by somebody that they've been on eBay, and I managed to get them that way. I had a Norfolk Admirals jersey, the blue, yellow, red, the Ronald McDonald, primary color jerseys. I found one of those that was being sold on eBay a few years ago, and for actually a really good price on it too. So, yeah, found them a couple of different ways. I don't actually really actively search on things, but I usually have people kind of within my circle that tip me off to things on occasion.
Which teams would you say are the easiest to work with to get yours?
Well, I mean, Las Vegas Wranglers gave us a jersey each year, and that was incredible. Portland this year with the Pirates, they let us take a jersey home, and I mean, I really can't say how much we appreciate that as players. That's a really big deal. Let's see, who else? My first go around in Portland, we had the option to buy, and they told us right away, and we're real upfront about it. Boy. Let's see. Peoria, I was able to get mine, no problem. Where else have I been recently? Springfield wasn't a problem. I just, you just kind of have to say, hey, I'd like to get my jersey, and then they just tell you what what they get them for, and they usually give them to us. I think they're at cost or at a little bit of a markup. That, if they make $20 on us or something, but they're, in any case, they pretty much let us have them at cost. Binghamton was real easy to do. So there's really only been one organization, I guess 2 organizations that I didn't really have an option, but one of them I didn't finish the season. Like in Columbus, I wasn't given an option to buy a jersey, but that's because I wasn't there at the end either, so it wouldn't have been expected for me. But that's one I'm actually missing. I don't have a Columbus jersey.
It's currently hanging on my wall.
Well, there we go.
I've got the white one. And there's some decent marks that I matched to a couple games because they had a total of 4 made for you. I don't know if you knew that or not. I believe it was 2 white and 2 blue. And the only reason I was tipped off is I got the Columbus Blue Jackets emails, and when they had their season ticket holder party or whatever it was, the following Monday they were then released to the public. So I called down there and found the one with the most wear and matched it with the one picture of you that's on Google where looks like you're juggling the puck with your stick.
Yeah.
It matches that one.
Yeah. That would have been, let's see. So I would have worn that probably in Carolina. And I'm trying to think of the road games I played when I was with Columbus. See, when you don't play many games, it's real easy for you to remember exactly the games that you played in the NHL, right? So, yeah, Shoot. That's cool though. I mean, that's like one of the only ones I don't have.
And as always, you can email me. We can definitely make a deal.
We could make something work. Yeah,
because I know it means a lot to you. So,
yeah. But like,
do you have do you have any of your? I know you had some issues with them, and we're only in camp and in preseason with them. But did you get any of your Blues stuff while you were there?
I actually do have a Blues preseason jersey of mine, and that was actually from my 2007 camp, and so went to camp with them, and I wore it in a preseason game in Dallas, I guess. And that jersey was actually gifted to me by a kid that I used to coach here in town. And that was really special. I really appreciated it from him. But as far as a couple of years ago when I was in Peoria, I never spent any training camp time with the Blues or anything like that. So no, I don't have a jersey there, but I do have the Peoria one.
And I know that was popular. It was the last weekend that the Rivermen existed as AHL. Watching you on the ice, your eyes keep getting bigger and bigger as they're auctioning off the ones there at the end. And if I remember correctly, I think it went for $1,200 or $1,300. The ones they sold then.
Yeah, that was impressive. I mean, that was a really bittersweet deal with Peoria because they'd been a Blues affiliate for a really long time. It went away for a few years to Worcester in the American League, but prior to that, when they were in the IHL, it was Peoria for years and years. And growing up as a kid from St. Louis, that's who the Blues affiliate was. That's what you grew up with. And then someday, later down the road, I got a chance to play for them. It was really cool. And knowing a couple people in town and see the American League team go away the way it did, and it was just, we could all understand the business aspect of it. That's not a problem, and I don't think anybody did anything wrong there. It's just, you see the look on people's faces and the uncertainty, and they didn't even know if they'd have hockey the next year. And it was a city that really had a pretty rich hockey tradition. And, thankfully they came in, and so they've got a Southern Professional Hockey League team there now. I've heard rumblings that they're going to try to get back to the ECHL, and I'd love to see that happen because it's a good city for it, and it'd be great with proximity to, Fort Wayne and Indy and all these other Toledo, all these other teams. But yeah, that was pretty cool to see a jersey go that high. I mean, I really like Peoria. I had a pretty special relationship, I thought, there with a lot of the fans and the organization too.
It's and you seem to have that almost anywhere you go. I know you've won multiple team awards. Almost anywhere you've gone, I've seen you win the Player of the Year award, which is phenomenal. But you just seem to be one of those guys that come in and you're everybody's favorite, but you stay active in the community. You do things wherever you go. It's not like it's just a stop along your career. You really make sure wherever you're at, you make it your own.
Yeah, and I've got a leg up too because I'm a goalie. It seems like goalies and tough guys are always the first ones, right? But really, it all comes down to just. I remember one interaction I had as a kid growing up with Greg Millen. He was a Blues goaltender that really just left a really strong impression on me. And he was a guy that, and he was only here for a year or two with the Blues, but my grandpa took me down after a practice of the Blues, and I met him. He gave me a stick, and he just said a couple words to me, but it left a real impression on me. And I think to how my grandpa used to treat people, and just that's something I try my best to do. Is that I think that if people want to take the time out of their day to meet us, to say hi, to even buy a ticket and come see us, then we should go out our way to try to make sure that they have a good time and that they have a positive interaction with us, and especially with kids too, because you just never know who you're going to influence. And I've been doing this long enough, where I've had kids come up to me that aren't kids anymore. These kids are, if they're in college or somewhere, and I saw you play here 8 years ago or whatever, and you're one of the reasons I'm a goalie. And that's just the coolest thing ever, right? And so leaving a good mark on things is pretty fulfilling. It's something I try to do.
Now, as a professional goalie and a big sports person now, did it feel weird the first time you started seeing your jerseys or signed pictures or cards or whatever showing up on eBay?
It was odd, yeah. And it just kind of makes you giggle, really. I mean, is it really worth this, And then, is this me? This is actually worth something? But yeah, the going rate isn't too expensive on my cards, and 8x10s I don't think on there, but it's really cool. I mean, I remember the first hockey card I saw on mine. I couldn't believe it. And there's so few kids that ever have an opportunity to do this in life, and we're so lucky to. And to get to that level is just so uncommon, and it's not lost on me at all. And there's all those cool little reminders along the way, And now with social media, I mean, I might get a message from somebody again 8-10 years ago that they've got an old stick that was signed or something, and those are just the coolest moments when you see those things come back around, and knowing to give somebody a smile, and it always jogs my memory bank too.
Oh, definitely. And it's you'll laugh. I mean, I'll be 37 next month, and say when I met you back in Junior Blues days, I still got the two signed sticks you gave me way back then. Plus, when I bought, I don't remember how many years ago it is now, bought your Junior Blues goalie set. It's still in the basement. And occasionally, if I want to go old school, I'll strap that stuff on and play.
Yeah, yeah, that stuff's it's past its prime, but it definitely serves in a retro capacity. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, question. Is there a player when you were growing up that you admired that you wouldn't mind collecting?
Oh boy. You know, I'm. That's hard to say, really. I mean, I'd love to get my hands on one of Felix Podfin's goalie masks because I think he had the best design ever. Um, and I guess, I had a couple of Curtis Joseph sticks, and he was an important guy in St. Louis too. But I never really truly keyed in on one guy. I mean, the collections that I had as a kid were with my dad and my grandfather both being off-ice officials with the Blues. Occasionally, we'd come across a cracked stick, or my grandpa would. Not many people would say no to a 75-year-old white-haired guy if he walked in and said, "My kid's a goalie. Would you mind grabbing a stick?" So we had some cool ones, and I've still got them in my basement at my parents' house. But yeah, I mean, I never really, like I say, I never really keyed in on one guy. But if I had, I would have to imagine it would have been just like any other kid growing up in St. Louis during the early 90s would have been Brett Hull or Curtis Joseph.
Now, when you're playing with the guys and other things like that, do you guys ever banter back and forth about this player collects his own stuff or this other guy maybe collects a few things? Because I know I've heard some stories of other players that collect various different items, like some do sticks, some do jerseys, some of them do gloves. Have you heard any weird stories like that?
Not any crazy ones, but I definitely have heard, and it happens more frequently in the NHL than it does in the American League, and kind of for obvious reasons. We're not exactly superstars down there, but you will see guys that are moving through that are big time prospects. And I remember when I played in Portland 8 years ago with Bobby Ryan for a season, and I mean, we all knew Bobby was going on to bigger and better things. I mean, he was just, he was a world class player at the time, even in the American League. And I remember a couple of teammates asking him for six at the end of the year. And so a friend of mine, Mike Hoffman, not the one that plays for the Senators, but this was a big guy, tough guy that had a good career in the American League. But, he asked for one of Bobby's sticks, and Bobby's 7-8 years younger. So he's got one of his sticks from back then. And I played with a guy named Kevin Nastiuk for a while in Las Vegas, a goaltender who dressed a game for Carolina, and Marty Brodeur was at center ice from the other side, and he asked Marty Brodeur for a stick in warm-ups, So that type of stuff does go on, actually, more than you'd think. And in the NHL, guys do trade sticks an awful lot. Every once in a while, you'll see the equipment guys bring something in from the other side that's autographed from another player. And trying to think of some of those guys, but who had traded. Can't think of any off the top of my head, but you do see it with those more often. And truthfully, I've always had this idea in the back of my head that if I ever really made it, right? I mean, I know I've made it by playing a couple NHL games, but if I ever really made it and was a full-time NHL guy, I mean, I would love to get 4 or 5 helmets a year. And I mean, obviously I'd probably have to pay for some out of pocket in that case, but I would do that. And I would trade masks with other goalies, or I'd trade masks with guys that I admire in racing with their helmets. It's a tradition that they have in racing. Those guys all trade helmets with each other, and they have just walls of helmets. And that's something we don't have as goalies that I think would be really cool to do, and something kind of a cool tradition to start.
That's awesome.
And you were one of the ones too. You kind of became one of the first big players, even at this level, or between the AHL and NHL, to go on social media like everybody is now. You were one of the first guys, I think, that really took a good hold of that.
Yeah, and if I hadn't gone to the Devils for a couple of years, I probably would have probably would have been even more known, I guess. But yeah, I guess in 2009 is when I first started using it. It was really probably within the first 2 years of Twitter coming out was when I kind of caught on with it. But I think that all started because really in college when I was at St. Lawrence, we were one of the first like 50 schools to have Facebook back when Facebook used to only be colleges. And your school had to apply for membership, and then it was this completely like underground club for just schools. And so we all had that, and so we were all pretty adept at social media. And then Twitter came along, and I was actually really hesitant to it for the first like year. I remember Norfolk, the Tampa year in Norfolk asked me if I would have a Twitter account that season. I was like, I don't know. And then at the end of that year, I started noticing all the IndyCar drivers and IndyCar teams that I follow and am interested in. Well, they started all using it, and so I started using it. And well, I look back to the early days, and it was basically me, and then Bissonette joined, and then that was kind of it for a while. And then I went on a 2-year hiatus, and then I came back. So.
And people that probably don't know that story, tell what happened with Jersey. I thought that was kind of a dumbass deal on their side.
Well, I mean, what I didn't know going in, just to preface it, really, is that I wasn't a Devil's pick. I wasn't a member of their organization for 5 years or anything before I come to camp or anything. I signed there, and that was that. And the whole season that I was in Lowell, I'd used Twitter, no problem. I was in the minor league. Nobody said anything. I didn't even think there was no problem. And then my second year with the Devils, I was getting called up from Albany to New Jersey, and I said that it's a great night for a drive, basically. And what I essentially did was, I guess it was tip everybody off that I was being called up. Even though I had previously said that it was a great night for a drive when I was driving up to my in-laws' house before, and it happened to be on the same highway as going the other direction down to New Jersey. But so I guess it tipped people off, and people have said that I announced my own call up like I was self-aggrandizing or doing something like that, and that's just not true. That's an exaggeration of the truth of what happened. But what really happened though is it kind of made everybody aware in New Jersey that they had a player who had a Twitter account. And I mean, nobody in New Jersey did, but the minor league, they didn't really keep track of. And so next thing you know, that was it. I mean, they don't allow it. They still, to this day, they don't allow their players to use social media. So, in a public manner, at least. So
to me, that sounds pretty bad when other teams are all over it, and players, and that gets a lot more fans, not just local fans, but fans all over involved in different ways. That sounds like pretty bass-ackwards way to do things, but what do I know? I don't run an NHL team.
Well, I mean, that was my whole deal, is when they asked me when they basically said, we're not allowing guys to use this, that was, I mean, that's their right, that's their prerogative, and I wanted to stay employed, and I was going to comply. That was no problem. So it's not like it was an essential part of me being an athlete or a person that I had to have it. It is something though that I think is really, it's really helped me in a lot of ways. I mean, I've had a lot of really, really cool interactions and opportunities come up that if I hadn't been active with social media, would have never happened for me. And I really do make an effort to try my best not to be, basically not be an idiot on there, I guess, is the best way to put it. But I mean, you do have to be somewhat calculated in what you put out there, obviously, because it's for everybody's consumption. So it's a good way to promote yourself, but it's also a good way to have fun and to help the game out. And I think it's only helped. It's only shows our personality. It shows what our interests are in life, and that's what fans really connect to. That's how they end up having favorites.
Now, do you ever hope, and this is a short story you can share as well, and I was a witness to this. Do you ever hope to score another goal, especially at the NHL level?
Oh yeah. We don't need to go into the details of that one, but I mean, when I scored that goal, I scored a goal when I was 17 in Springfield. It was the first one in the history of the North American League, and it was the best moment of my life at that point by a long shot. And part of it too is that I had teammates that had basically told me it's never going to happen, and if it happens, you got to do this. And we kind of cut a deal, and some things happened with it. But regardless, if I could score another goal, that would just be the best. I mean, I've managed to accomplish a fair amount in hockey, but put another one in pro or put another one in the NHL would just be incredible. But it's so hard now though with the trapezoid, and they've made it bigger in the last year, but it's still really difficult to do it. I mean, it's got to be a perfect scenario pretty much where they almost dump it straight on you and you get rid of it right away, like Mike Smith did a couple of years ago. It's about the only way to do it. When I was in junior, I stopped it behind the net and I turned out to the side of the net and shot it. And nowadays the trapezoid kind of takes up that area, and I wouldn't be able to do it anymore. But what a cool moment! I mean, just a massive adrenaline rush.
I did think you got shafted, though, that it gave you a penalty for celebrating. I mean,
well worth it.
I'm not proud of that, and I really wish it could go away, to be honest with you. But it is what happened. I got to own up to it. But like I said, there were some circumstances with teammates that really played into that. So it wasn't like I did it on my own accord.
Sure. No, and knowing that team back then, I could only imagine.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm gonna have to look up that video.
What? Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying I'm gonna have to look up that video so I can see this penalized Selly.
I don't know if anybody had it videoed back then. I was one of the team photographers.
This was 2000, man. YouTube didn't come around for another 6 years.
Oh man,
4 years or something. Yeah.
Describe it to me, please.
I'd really rather not. I mean, it wasn't horrible. I mean, it was horrible. So I don't even want to go into it. Really. I mean, I got an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, which, in the grand scheme of things, it came around and bit me because I'm the guy that'll forever be known as Ovechkin doing a hot stick celebration. Well, you know what? I probably deserved it for what happened in junior. So I don't really believe in. I'm not a big karma guy, but if it does exist, that'd be the prime example of it right there.
Now, with the hope, if they pass them, the rule changes coming up for the NHL, how much do you think that'll affect you? Will it open up the ice more, make it more difficult, or do you think it'll kind of even things out?
Which you speak of?
Going to the 3-on-3 overtime.
Oh, I mean, we played with it in the American League this year. We went 4-on-4 for the first 3 minutes, and then the next whistle we went to 3-on-3. And I mean, I think it's going to be great. I truly think that it's as rare as it is to ever happen. It does happen in games. I've played 3-on-3 before. Now, it wasn't for more than 20 or 30 seconds at a time, and it may have only been 2 or 3 times during my career, but it's happened. And it's hockey. You're playing hockey. And a shootout to me, it's just not a realistic representation of hockey. And that's me. I know everybody else has different opinions on it, but when we went to 4-on-4, we already crossed a bridge, and we might as well go one step further. And it's going to be wild. I mean, the first 20, 30, 40 seconds are kind of a chess match. One team gets the puck, they regroup a bit, they try to do something with it, they may not get through the neutral zone, and then eventually the dam breaks, and one team goes for it, and if they don't score, it goes the other direction, and if they don't score, it goes the other direction, and it does that until either somebody scores or people get tired and get off, and then they regroup again. And it's going to be great entertainment. I mean, and you're going to see the best of the best on the ice, tic-tac-toeing pucks, skating like the wind. It's really going to be cool, and there's going to be some huge saves and highlight reel saves out of it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Now, we touched on this a little bit in some of the stuff that with you collecting not just your jerseys, but you keep all your masks. Talk about how you come up, especially more in the last few seasons, the designs you do and what you try and incorporate in your masks.
Well, mine are probably a little bit more traditional, I guess, than a lot of guys have gone, and really in the last, I guess, 15 or 20 years even. A lot of masks have just become hyper stylized, and to me, that's not really my thing. I prefer masks that you can see what it is from a distance. A lot of the newer masks are, can't tell what it is unless you're a foot away from it, and that's not my style. As cool as those designs and those paint jobs are, it's just not what I prefer. And like I say, I mean, my favorite mask of all time was the old Felix Potvin Toronto Maple Leafs mask with the cat on it, kind of, and Curtis Joseph's. Before he had the Cujo masks, he had this super simple blues mask that had trumpets on each side and sheet music on it, and it was just really clean, and you could see it from anywhere in the building. It was awesome. So mine are kind of, I try to throw back a little bit to those, but I've kind of had I guess a racing theme, at least, in just a basic design to it. There's a guy named Jeff Ward that used to race Indy cars that had a helmet that I really liked years ago, and so I've kind of based my masks off that loosely ever since. And they've all taken on their different personality. I try to keep the mask itself team oriented. On the back plate, I'll have some personal things, but for the most part, I just want to have team stuff, team logos, things that tie into the city, if I can do it, and if I can do it in a big and bold enough manner that you can see what it is from a distance. So that's kind of the basic deal for mine. There's always a little guy on the back that's kind of like my mascot, I guess. My best friend drew him this year for me, which was awesome that they managed to put him on the back. It's literally a cartoon drawing for my best friend with his signature on it too. Like, he was so stoked about this. And that was really cool. I mean, 10 years into a pro career to get that to happen. So, yeah, I guess mine are kind of they're just a little bit different than most of the ones today that are just going overboard. But you're kind of seeing a trend back to cleaner masks though too. I mean, Scott Clemenson had them for years. The last couple of years, his are really clean. Luongos have been really clean. Michael Hutchinson comes to mind in Winnipeg. So there's a few of us that are trying to go back to the older style.
Now
how many? Go ahead, Derek.
All right. I've had some interactions with players myself and tried to talk to them a little bit about collecting and things like that. And it almost seemed like a lot of them didn't know, like, the entire community that we have exists. Like, all these different individuals collecting jerseys. Now, are you familiar with any of the awareness other players may or may not have about, like, people collecting actual game jerseys? Or is it just something that they don't really think about?
I think it just kind of depends on the person. I mean, we've got some guys in hockey that are, I mean, they couldn't give a rip about anything other than hockey, and that's it in their career and getting to the NHL. And then you get other guys that, go home and study and do school in the summer and read Time magazine. And so I think it just kind of is all over the board with that. But there's definitely guys who are aware of it. And some of us over the years have had interactions with people who, for instance, let's say they want to get a jersey signed, or, whatever it may be, we've interacted with people in that manner, or, they find out that somebody's got 4 or 5 of their jersey. And I mean, obviously that's a really cool thing. And you want to do something for that person if you can sometimes. So, I'd say there's a decent amount of guys that are aware of it. I mean, it's not lost on guys too, especially when you look at, like, let's say like junior cities where guys play for 3-4 years at a time. Their jerseys can go for crazy amounts of money, and they really get attached to the billet families and other people. So, yeah, people are aware of it, but it's not like it's much of a conversation point in the room, I would guess.
Now, when you were in Jersey, I know you said you had a little bit of interaction with Marty Brodeur. Would you want to have, especially now since he's in St. Louis, would you want to have any of his stuff hanging on your wall?
I'm kicking myself that I didn't ask him for a stick back then, but I also, in some manners too, I didn't want to. I mean, he was my teammate, so I didn't really. He was my teammate, but I also never dressed a live game with him. I mean, I was there because he was hurt for the most part, and so I felt kind of awkward in asking him because of that. But I wish I had, though, at this point, because it'd just be really cool to have a stick from the all-time leader of everything, and a guy who was one of my absolute favorites growing up. And but maybe someday. I mean, he is here in St. Louis. Maybe I'll run into him this summer, but I don't think he's keeping too much hockey gear around at this point.
I heard he hoards a lot of his own stuff.
Yeah, he might. I mean, it's interesting. Some guys really do like keep a lot of stuff. Like I played with a guy in the Devils organization named Jeff Frazee, who had grand plans of building like a bar in his basement or putting his pads on the wall or the pads being under the bar, and like he just had piles and piles of pads, and he had grand plans for him. And I kind of got to the point where it was like I need to make a decision here on what pads I'm going to keep for the long haul, and what pads are just going to, whether I give them away or whether I sell them and donate that money to charity or whatever it is. I came across that bridge a couple of years ago and realized I got way too much stuff. It's got to go.
And it's not like that stuff doesn't take up much room.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've already got a storage shed that's got a lot of stuff in it for when we move. I mean, I have to move twice a year with my profession. And so I basically have, at this point, almost 2 sets of household things. And, I don't need 10 sets of gear taking up space there. I got the smallest storage shed available. I don't need to bump up another size.
Now, how many masks do you have in your collection now?
I am up to a dozen right now. So I've got 10 years of pro, one from each. Well, I guess my Las Vegas mask actually got a couple years of usage out of it. But yeah, I've got a dozen masks now.
And anybody who's not seen those pictures, I know you've tweeted them out occasionally. It's amazing to see that wall and see your design changes over the years and the color changes and just the concept. The other thing that you always seem to be good about that you've done in past years is the goalie pad design, is putting some of that out to the fans and getting that fan interaction, like you said, using Twitter, Facebook, things like that, and getting those fans even closer to you and to the game. And I know there's been huge amounts of people that have sent pad designs in for you, and you don't see that with a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know I was one of the first to do it. I guess I'm patting myself on the back for being a trailblazer here, but I mean, I see guys do it all the time now. Like I think Vaughn might actually be promoting it for their goalie pads with guys now. It's pretty common to see, but 5 years ago it was. 4 or 5 years ago, no one was really doing it. And I remember when I signed with Ottawa and I put up 4 different designs. So this was, like I say, 4 or 5 years ago. And I think I had like 600 or 700 votes throughout social media for these things, which at the time I thought that was really big. And again, for me being a minor league guy, I mean, it's not like I had 50,000 followers at the time or something like that. At that time I might have had 5,000 followers. And so I'm in there tallying things up by hand. But yeah, it's really cool to do, and it's fun to let the fans design things themselves and take ownership in what you do, And I've had a couple guys that design gear that I always promised them, I owe you an 8x10 or whatever it is, and I'll send it to them at the end of the season and try to make good on it. But it does get tough though, because equipment companies, I've always worn Bauer, and if Bauer's coming out with a new pad the next season with new color scheme and new everything, I can't do a contest because we've got to keep it under wraps what the entire pad itself looks like. So if there's ever a year where I don't do something, that's probably why. And I think this coming year might be one of those.
I was just at goalie camp and I got to see what I think you're talking about.
Yeah, Bauer's got new stuff coming out, but it's what they have coming out has basically been Henrik Lundqvist's pet project for the past, I think, 2 seasons now. 2 seasons. So pretty revolutionary stuff. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag on it because I haven't seen it in person or anything, but I think Bauer's really setting themselves up for something big with this one.
Yeah, they look really cool.
I had to laugh too, Mike, because one of the things that we talk about and we've done some past shows on is photo matching, where we'll go out and, like I said, with your Columbus jersey, is be able to find pictures and match them to particular games or events in the games, things like that. And as I was trying to find the audio to use at the beginning of the show, I found you doing a video for Total Hockey talking about, I think it was the 1/100 gloves, but you had your your Devil's gloves in the video, plus the generic designs that they had, and it matched the ones that you gave me several years ago. I mean, the marks down the side of the gloves, the whole bit, and it was neat matching them to things outside of the games.
Yeah, I mean that's something that you guys, I would have never even thought of that, right? And that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I usually keep the I usually keep my gear on until the end of summer before I start moving it along. So that would make sense. That's what I would have had there when I did that video. That's cool.
It's funny how us as collectors can say geek out on stuff like that, and the pictures we scour for every little jersey mark to thread, any of that, and I've got your white Blues training camp jersey from way back. Found one picture of you, I think it was, may have been Traverse City, because you were playing against the Red Wings, but it's the
Yep.
only picture I've ever found of you wearing that jersey. I think there's like 2 little puck marks on it, but I was able to pick it up through the Blues shop after the season started. They were getting rid of some of those. It was the first year of those Edge style jerseys, which was kind of neat to get a hold of.
Yeah, that would have been. Give you a fun fact on that. Thomas McCollum was the goalie at the other end for that game, actually. So yeah, I remember that. That was Traverse City, and that was 8 seasons ago. That's amazing.
I have a pair of McCollum's pads. I have this problem where lately I just buy pads to buy them, and I don't have the space for it. It's really sad.
That's why I'm trying to get rid of things.
I want to. I keep looking at them. I'm like, I can't get rid of them. I can't make up my mind. It's hard. I feel your pain.
Yeah. Well, at least with my stuff, I can usually get something of a return on it, and I usually try to. If somebody buys something from me, I usually just tell them, listen, make a donation to this animal shelter that I got my dog at, or if I end up collecting money from eBay with everything, I'll donate it to them, and that's. I think that's only fair. I don't think it's really. Yeah, I don't think it'd be right for me to just take the money and run at this point in my life, because the teams pay for the stuff in the first place and they give it to us at the end of the year, and then so it wasn't really mine in the first place, I guess, from that standpoint. And it's a good way to help out with shelters and other things that can always use the money.
With
Yeah, I know you did. Go ahead, Derek.
With the evolution of gear lately, I've noticed that there have been a lot of changes very fast. Do you find it's harder to get used to the new stuff, or it's easier because of the technology they put behind it?
I, my stuff's kind of been an evolution. I'm sure that's true for most of the guys who've been pro for a long time. So whenever I've stepped into a new pad, it's never truly been that different than my past one. They've carried over some of the specs into the new stuff, so it hasn't been a big problem. I think the new stuff that I'm set to get from Bauer and everybody else is, it could be a departure, but we're all hoping it's a positive departure. So I think the biggest difference, though, really is that the way we wear our gear now, we don't have to break it in. You know, we used to spend weeks on weeks trying to get pads soft and bend them and flex them. And I get the pads out of the box and I put them on for 3 or 4 days of practice so that they mold to my legs a little bit, and then they're good to go for a game. And I know there's guys who straight use them literally out of a box. And that's a little bit more extreme than myself, but they just don't take any time to break in. And we use them so stiff now too that after a month or 2 months, they're losing their height and we're ready to get rid of them.
Jason, you were gonna say something.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just, you were talking to Mike about your auction off your gear to put toward the animal shelter. I know you did that last year, and it was a very popular auction. I know you had some Riverman stuff in there. I think you had some maybe even had some Blue Jackets stuff, but I know it did well, and I do think that's awesome that you put it out there, and it's not just money in your pocket, but it's going to a good cause, and it gets a lot more people behind it. And I know some of that stuff disappeared within minutes of going on eBay.
Yeah, I think the graphic is still out there, but I think at the end of the day, it was like 750 or almost $800, I want to say. And that's a big chunk for a shelter, and yeah, it's just felt like the right thing to do with it. And but you're right, though. I put some stuff on eBay that were like buy nows, and I regretted the buy now function afterwards because they went so quickly. but I just didn't know what the interest would be. So maybe if I do it again in the future, I'll have a little bit better handle on it.
You just sometimes don't realize how popular you are.
Or how popular or how much in need people are of full ride equipment. That's much more telling than myself, I think.
That is, yeah, that true as well. As I say, I just happen to be lucky enough to also be full right, and I know you saw the picture of the Riverman gear I got a hold of that you had, and lucky enough to get to play in that, and just playing in pro gear. I mean, we're all lucky. Derek and I know can say the same thing, and it's just so awesome to put that on and play not as well as you do, but still be able to play decent and feel like we're pros.
Well, there's a reason why it's pro gear. I mean, it is nice stuff. There's no doubt about that. But um, I have seen things kind of go awry sometimes with people. They get something and they think it's going to be like something off the shelf, and it's just completely different because, I mean, our pro specs can be so far off what's actually in a store, you know? So I know some people that are really happy when it shows up and they love it. And then some people are just like, man, I wish I could have felt this first and known what it was like. But it's kind of the nature of the beast when you're buying something that's game used is you really just, you never know what you're getting when it comes down to specs.
Lucky for me, I'm a new league beer leaguer. You know, I haven't been playing very long, so anything I strap on, I don't know what to compare it to. So I can put on anything and use it.
Oh, you're you're lucky. I mean, I remember I've put on different stuff. I put on different goalies. I remember Jake Allen and I switched pads when we were in Peoria one day just for the fun of it, and he wore my Bowers and I wore his Vaughns, and just because I hadn't worn anything else in so long, and it felt so foreign to us, man. We were both. I mean, he actually really liked my Bowers if I remember right, but and his Vaughns were fine too, but they felt so different, and we both ended up we ended up back with what we'd always worn because that was what had been good to us and what felt most comfortable. And that's why you see guys that tend to stay with the same company for so long.
Well, and I know you probably couldn't change now since you named your dog after your favorite gear. So
Yeah, well, we've got you know what? They've been really good to me though. Bauer has, and my equipment rep there's a guy named Todd Brown who I've literally known since I was a sophomore in college. At this point, he's taken care of me, and that's, he knows what I need. I hardly have to do much explaining before he can just put it down and in his notepad, and it shows up the next time. So, I'm deep enough. I'm deep enough into my career. I don't need to switch at this point. just, I don't need to make things any harder on myself than they already are.
now I think you even, if I remember right, you told me the story a number of years ago with being in the locker room with Marty and him looking at your pads because he stayed with his old setup. Didn't he make changes after going over your stuff?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was a direct result of my equipment in there or not, but for years and years, he had goalie partners who had pretty traditional equipment, and Johan Hedberg's was really basic, old school stuff, and Marty's was old school, and then I came in there, and my stuff was all just as big as I could get it up to the legal limit, and it was squared off it was modern, basically. It was just like everybody else in the game, except for basically Marty and Johan at that point. And so we used to go over things, and he didn't even have knee lifts on his pads. He just had these old round ovals still at that point. And this was 5 years ago. So yeah, we actually spent a lot of time talking about equipment, and different things with the pads and trying to just show how they worked and fit and everything. And then by last year of his career, he pretty much incorporated all of it. So, I am not going to take any influence on Marty Brodeur in any way and claim that whatsoever. But I think in some way, though, he at least seeing my gear firsthand and some of the other guys around, and probably his kids more than anybody, I bet you, because his kids were both getting to be teenagers. That eventually got him to kind of update all his equipment.
And that's just, I couldn't imagine even just being in a room with him. Just the goalie he still is. He proved that when he played the games in St. Louis. But again, and we all appreciate you coming on and being open with us. And it's the first time we've ever had be able to have a pro on this podcast, and hopefully we've got a lot of people listening, a lot of good information. It's nice to get somebody on the inside in the NHL and the AHL and get your take, especially being a collector as well. What is there any other pieces of your past jerseys, memorabilia, any things that you wish you had other than just the couple jerseys you're missing?
I can't really think anything that I, wish I'd hung on to over the years. Just those couple jerseys I don't have, but
And
I do have. I tell you what, I have a one hell of a puck collection, and that's actually started from. I mean, my grandpa started that years ago, so I've got things dating back to like the 50s, 60s, on through until today's, and that's something that's been really fun to keep up with over the years. Trying to grab a puck here and there when I can, and trading with different equipment managers and stuff. And that one's really cool. That's one that I'd like to be able to display someday if I could, get big enough cases made for it. Kind of like those big ones at the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. That'd be cool to take up a basement wall someday if I could.
now, do you have your shutout puck from Tampa?
Oh yeah, that's on. That Tampa Bay actually had that mounted, and they had it framed and mounted and everything. So, yeah, Tampa was really good about that. I've got my first win and my first shutout pucks. And then one of the coolest things you get from the NHL is after you play your first NHL game, they send you a big plaque that has a game sheet and a puck and a letter from Gary Bettman and just congratulating you on finally making it, or not finally, I shouldn't say that, but congratulating you on making it to the NHL. And that's just the coolest thing. I had no idea that was going to show up, and there it was one day.
That's awesome. That's a nice way to wrap this all up. And again, good luck with the upcoming season. Will you still be with the Arizona organization, or do you know as of yet?
I don't know. And that would have to happen soon because free agency starts on Wednesday. So I don't know what's going to happen. I wouldn't rule anything out at all in any direction. So we'll see. Who knows? But I do. I think I'll be back in North America this year. I think. I mean, a lot of people have asked me if I'm going to go to Europe or anything, but we'll see. Who knows? Hopefully something good comes along.
Well, we all wish you good luck. And Mike, again, thank you for coming on. I appreciate all the back and forth emails and the rescheduling and everything. Thanks for working with us, and thank you for spending your Sunday evening with us for an hour and giving us a lot of good information.
Hey, no problem. It was a pleasure, and I'm glad the tornado stayed away, at least 5-10 miles away. So we're all safe here.
And hopefully that continues the rest of the night. But Mike, again, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody for listening. Another fantastic GameWorn.net or GameWorn.us.
Oh, that's bad.
That was terrible radio show. Thanks for all the listeners, everybody submitting questions. We appreciate it.
Yes, Mike. Thanks again for joining us. It was a blast.
No problem. Thanks again for having me, guys.
Thank
All right,
you.
guys. That's going to be the end of our show for this week. Next week, I think we're going to resume with photo matching. So anybody who wants to call in, we'll go ahead and line you up. As usual, keep an eye on the forums for any sort of updates on times as well as questions, anything like that you want to arrange. Please reserve your spots. We are going to start limiting them so we don't get 20 different people on a call at a time. Appreciate you guys listening, and we're going to get this out there to anybody who needs to listen in the future. As always, keep on collecting. Doc, thanks for helping me out on this one.
Sure. Hopefully you continue to feel better.
Thank you. Pete, Eric, thanks for joining in.
Anytime.
And Mike, thanks again. It was awesome having you on.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Have a good one.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.